Dana Abercrombie, the coalition. Thank you so much for speaking to me. As a native Ugandan, I was wondering, Bobby's journey, when he announced he was going to run for president, was always going to be hard. But for me, the viewer, I didn't anticipate it to be so violent and deadly. I was wondering, did you know that from the beginning, since you've kind of lived in Uganda and know the politics of what it would take to run against the current president?
Dana, thank you so much for having me today. Yes, I did. We did know what we were expecting. Past elections had been similar. Just the same script. Museveni wins at the end of the day. The opposition leader or the candidate that comes out, as a strong opponent is either locked up or there's trumped up charges and these kinds of things. So yes, we had an idea of what was going to happen, but this time there was massive. There was so much support. Bobby, as you've seen in the film, he's a very charismatic leader. He's he unifies, and he's the embodiment of the fight for freedom. And he had garnered this support from different age groups, and there was just mammoths of individuals and the Ugandan population behind him. So for some reason, I thought, and many Ugandans, most of us thought, we were going to overwhelm the dictatorship, and in fact, yes, we knew how violent the dictatorship was, but when they're overwhelmed, there's not so much they can do. But regardless, vote day came, election day came. Bobby won the election, but there was such there was so much, I would say, repression. People were being kidnapped, picked up. His election representatives at polling stations were being arrested, bundled in vans. One night during the time he was in house arrest, we got a phone call that in one region, which is one of in the central, where he has like a lot of support, all election agents had been locked up and put in prison. And it was just a dark moment, but regardless, he still won the election regardless of the repression and what was going on. But it's a dictatorship, and there's not so much you can do at that point. And that's why Bobby now is calling for the West to put in place preconditions on Uganda with the aid that they're sending to Uganda. He's asking the West to put in place, or ask the Ugandan government to have free and fair elections. With a free and fair election, with election representatives from the US, from Europe, being there to observe the election, we know that he will emerge as a winner.
Right. So the intent, it also seemed, was for this film to never be released because of the government didn't want this to be shown. What were the safeguard measures that you took to not only protect yourself, but to protect the film?
Yeah. In the 5 years of following Bobi Wine, a lot happened to me personally. I was locked up in jail. I was arrested a few times. I was interrogated. I was shot in the face towards the election at close range. But all through, of course, we lost lots of equipment and some footage that that I would be arrested with, cards or stuff like that, but nothing very, very important. But I was, we were very fortunate and lucky that we were not editing in Uganda. We were editing in the UK. So every couple of days, I would send footage out of Uganda. I found ways to, hide cards. And, there's a pattern that I had observed. Caucasian journalists covering the situation or the news in Uganda they were never brutalized or arrested or anything like that. So they became allies, they became friends. I would hand cards to them. I would, find ways of giving them hard drives or things like that. And that's how I kept safe and I kept the footage safe. But there was really no safety on myself. It was just a volatile situation. I was receiving intimidating phone calls, and I had to flee Uganda. I had to flee the country, and as we speak, I don't live in Uganda anymore.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Has there been any response from the Ugandan government since the release of this film?
No, there hasn't, but they're probably just ignoring it. But they, it's. I'm sure they've gotten a big blow on this, and just recently, President Biden withdrew the AGOA agreement, which is this agreement that had a couple of African countries, including Uganda, to do business with the U.S. And I think one of the reasons was that Uganda has not, put in place, is not following the human rights. The human rights situation in Uganda is not being respected. The government has not done much to further democratic values, and that's a good thing, because then the government in Uganda, there's pressure on them, and they have to rethink their actions. And we hope this and more will come when the film is seen by many people, and we hope that the West sees the film and they can rethink the way they engage with the dictatorship in Uganda.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for speaking to me, and thank you for bringing this important film to the United States and the rest of the world.
Thank you, Dana.